Can food really help clean your arteries without surgery? Yes, it can help, and the evidence is a lot stronger than most people realize. Now, let me be careful with that word clean, because arteries are not kitchen pipes you scrub out overnight. But certain foods can lower LDL cholesterol, calm inflammation, support the delicate lining of your blood vessels, and make plaque less likely to grow or rupture. And honestly, that is where real prevention starts. I'm Dr. Charles Oliver, and I spend a huge part of my working life helping people avoid the heart attack or stroke they never saw coming. So if you value clear, honest health guidance, please subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone you care about. Food 1. Oats. To be honest, oats are one of the least glamorous foods I talk about, and yet I come back to them again and again in clinic because they quietly do a job that flashy diet trends simply do not. I eat them myself most mornings, not because they are trendy, but because they are dependable. You know how dust sticks to a damp cloth better than to a dry one? That is a useful way to think about the soluble fiber in oats, especially beta-glucan. As that fiber moves through your gut, it forms a sort of gel that grabs onto bile acids, which are made partly from cholesterol. Your body then has to pull more cholesterol out of the blood to make new bile. That is one of the ways oats help lower LDL, the type of cholesterol most closely tied to plaque buildup in artery walls. And one more thing on oats, because this is where people go wrong. They assume healthy means expensive or complicated. It does not. Some of the most artery-helpful foods are the cheapest items in the supermarket. A simple bowl of oats keeps you away from the breakfast that sends your blood sugar flying and leaves you hungry again by 10 in the morning. Why does that matter for arteries? Because the more chaotic your eating pattern becomes, the harder it is to keep weight, cholesterol, and insulin in a healthy range. Oats create stability, and stability is underrated in medicine. Now, a lot of you will be wondering, is that just a nice theory, or does it actually show up in real studies? It does. There was a systematic review and meta-analysis published in the British Journal of Nutrition that pooled randomized controlled trials of oat beta-glucan and found reductions in LDL cholesterol, non-HDL cholesterol, and ApoB, which, if you think about it, is actually quite remarkable for something as ordinary as breakfast. I'm not going to overstate the evidence here. Oats do not melt plaque away in a week. But when a food can repeatedly nudge the chemistry of the blood in a better direction, day after day, that matters. Stay with me because this matters. Artery disease usually grows in silence, and small daily shifts done consistently often beat dramatic changes that last 3 days. So what do I tell patients to do tomorrow morning? Keep it boring and practical. Use plain rolled oats or steel-cut oats, make them with water or unsweetened milk, and add berries, cinnamon, or a spoon of ground flax if you like. Do not turn them into dessert. If your oatmeal comes with syrupy packets and candy flavoring, you have missed the point. Right then, once you understand oats, the next food starts to make a lot of sense too. Food 2. Beans and lentils. I have a habit of asking patients what they ate over the last 24 hours, and beans almost never show up unless someone grew up in a household where they were normal. Honestly, that is a shame, because beans and lentils are some of the best artery-friendly foods on the planet. They slow you down in the best possible way. They are full of soluble fiber, they help with fullness, and they tend to replace foods that are far more damaging, like processed meat or refined starch. And here's the thing. Most people focus only on what a food contains, but what it displaces matters just as much. When a bowl of lentil soup replaces sausage and chips, that is not a tiny swap. That is a major metabolic change. Think of your bloodstream like a road system. If too many heavy, messy trucks keep spilling debris, the roads deteriorate faster. Beans help by reducing some of that traffic and some of that debris. They improve the cholesterol picture, soften blood sugar spikes, and feed gut bacteria that produce compounds linked with better metabolic health. There was a meta-analysis in CMAJ that looked at randomized, controlled trials of dietary pulses, meaning beans, chickpeas, lentils, and peas. Roughly 1 serving a day for a median of about 6 weeks lowered LDL cholesterol in a meaningful way. Again, not magic. Real. Modest. Repeatable. That is the kind of effect I respect as a doctor, because modest plus repeatable is how risk drops over years. With beans and lentils, I also like the fact that they are forgiving. Miss a day? Fine. Try again tomorrow. You do not need a cleanse, a reset, or a motivational speech. You just need a few meals each week where pulses become normal. That might sound too simple, and I know that. But simple is often what saves people. Complicated plans tend to collapse the moment life gets busy. A pot of lentil soup in the fridge is not glamorous, but it quietly protects you in a way drive-through food never will. Now, if you are thinking, but doctor, beans upset my stomach, fair point. Start small. Half a cup, not a mountain. Rinse canned beans well. Try lentils first, because many people tolerate them better. Add them to soup, chili, or a salad with olive oil and lemon. You do not need a perfect Mediterranean villa and a sunset in the background. You need one practical habit you can repeat on a Wednesday. And if you are finding this useful, which I really hope you are, please do hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone in your family. It genuinely helps more people see information that could change the course of their health. Okay, so before I move on, let me say something I think builds trust. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you any of these foods are a magic bullet. They are not. Some of the dramatic claims you see online are miles ahead of what the evidence actually shows. No single meal scrubs arteries clean. No respectable doctor should promise that. But food absolutely changes the environment inside your body. It changes LDL levels, blood pressure, inflammation, endothelial function, insulin response, and the stability of plaque over time. That is not hype. That is physiology. And honestly, when you respect the limits of the evidence, the real story becomes even more convincing. Food. 3. Walnuts. This next one is probably the most overlooked, partly because people still get nervous around nuts. I hear it all the time. Aren't they too fatty? Won't they make me gain weight? A lot of you will be wondering that, and I understand why. For years, fat got treated like the villain in every room, but walnuts are a very different story. I keep them around because they are easy, portable, and they stop me from reaching for the kind of snack that comes in a shiny packet and tastes engineered in a lab. Walnuts bring unsaturated fats, some omega-3 alpha-linolenic acid, fiber, and plant compounds that seem to help the inner lining of the arteries behave better. You can picture the endothelial lining of your arteries as a smooth, intelligent Teflon-like surface that helps blood flow where it needs to go. When that lining gets irritated, stiff, and dysfunctional, trouble begins long before a heart attack. There was a randomized controlled crossover trial published in Diabetes Care in 2010 involving adults with type 2 diabetes. The participants ate a diet enriched with walnuts for 8 weeks, and the researchers found improvement in flow-mediated dilation, which is a way of testing how well blood vessels relax. That matters because vessels that relax properly are generally healthier vessels, which, if you think about it, is actually quite remarkable for a simple handful of food. There is also something deeply useful about the way walnuts slow eating down. You have to chew them. They satisfy you. They make it easier not to keep grazing on ultra-processed foods that do far more harm than most people realize. And no, you do not need to eat a giant bag. More is not better. A sensible portion works beautifully. If you have a nut allergy, obviously this is not for you, but for many people, walnuts are one of those rare foods that are both convenient and genuinely protective. My practical advice is very straightforward. Keep walnuts visible. If healthy food is hidden, you will forget it exists. A small handful most days is plenty. Add them to plain yogurt, oats, or a salad, or just eat them on their own instead of biscuits in the afternoon. Do not sugarcoat them. Do not honey roast them. And no, a walnut brownie does not count. Now, moving on, there is another food I use so often in practice that I almost think of it as liquid medicine, except it is still food. Food 4. Extra virgin olive oil. To be honest, I drizzle extra virgin olive oil on vegetables, beans, and salads almost without thinking, and that is exactly why it works so well in real life. It does not demand a separate ritual. It just replaces something less helpful. And here's the thing. When people hear oil, they sometimes imagine clogged pipes and greasy danger, but your body is not reacting to oil in some cartoonish way. The type of fat matters enormously. Extra virgin olive oil is rich in monounsaturated fat and polyphenols, and those compounds appear to help reduce oxidation and inflammation while improving the overall environment inside blood vessels. If you want the big study here, it is hard to ignore PREDIMED, the large randomized trial republished in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2018. It followed people at high cardiovascular risk and compared a Mediterranean-style diet supplemented with extra virgin olive oil, another with nuts, and a lower fat control approach. The groups eating the Mediterranean pattern with extra virgin olive oil or nuts had fewer major cardiovascular events. That does not prove olive oil alone performed a miracle, and I want to be very careful about that, but it tells us something powerful. A dietary pattern built around foods like this can change outcomes that really count, including heart attack and stroke. And let me clear up a common misunderstanding. Buying extra virgin olive oil does not give you a free pass to eat badly around it. Pouring olive oil over a diet full of refined flour, processed meat, and sugary snacks does not create some magical shield. The benefit shows up when olive oil becomes part of a broader pattern built around real food. That is why context matters so much. In clinic, I see people looking for one heroic ingredient. What actually helps is the set of choices that ingredient makes easier day after day. So what is the daily move? Use extra virgin olive oil where it naturally belongs. Dress vegetables with it. Stir it into beans. Use it instead of butter for many meals. Dip tomatoes, cucumber, or whole grain bread into it if that helps you eat more real food and less processed rubbish. Stay with me because this matters. Most people do not need exotic superfoods. They need better defaults. And olive oil is one of the best default upgrades I know. Now, here comes a food group that people often underestimate because it looks too simple to be powerful. Food. 5. Leafy green vegetables. Honestly, leafy greens are not exciting television, but they are wonderful medicine disguised as something your grandmother kept telling you to eat. I try to get some most days, whether that is spinach, arugula, watercress, romaine, or a big handful of mixed greens thrown into lunch. Why do they matter for arteries? Because they bring nitrates from vegetables, not the processed meat kind, and your body can convert those into nitric oxide. Nitric oxide helps blood vessels relax and signals the artery wall to stay more open and flexible. You can think of it as helping the traffic lights and lane markings of the circulation system work properly. Without enough of that signaling, vessels become more tense and less responsive. Now, is there actual evidence? Or is this another case of doctors romanticizing salad? There is evidence. A study published in Stroke looked at older women and found that higher vegetable nitrate intake was associated with less thickening of the carotid artery wall and a lower long-term risk of ischemic cerebrovascular events. There was also a randomized clinical trial published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in adults with elevated blood pressure that examined leafy green vegetables and inorganic nitrate. So, no, this is not just folklore. I'm not going to overstate the evidence here because leafy greens are not a bypass operation on a plate, but they support the chemistry that keeps vessels flexible, calm, and functional. And that is exactly the kind of quiet protection I want for my patients. Leafy greens also do something psychologically useful. They change the center of gravity of a meal. Once greens are on the plate, people are less likely to build the whole meal around something fried, processed, or heavy. You start thinking differently. You start choosing differently. And yes, I know some of you hate the taste. Fine. Use lemon, olive oil, herbs, garlic, or toss them into soups and stews. You do not have to perform virtue. You just have to find a version you will actually eat often enough for your arteries to notice. The easiest way to use this tomorrow is not to force down a giant bowl of plain kale while feeling miserable. Make it normal. Add a handful of spinach to eggs. Put arugula under whatever protein you are having for lunch. Throw mixed leaves into a lentil soup right at the end so they wilt. Blend spinach into a smoothie if that helps you get started. You know, the best artery cleaning diet is usually the one you can live with long enough for it to matter. And here's the thing, the pattern behind these foods is the real lesson. More soluble fiber, more unsaturated fat from real foods, more plant compounds, more support for the endothelium, the blood vessel lining that works all day without applause. And before you think this only matters if you already have high cholesterol, let me stop you there. Artery damage builds quietly for years. By the time symptoms show up, the process is often well underway. So the best time to eat in a protective way is not after the scare. It is before it, while you still feel fine. That is prevention at its best. A lot of you will be wondering which of these 5 foods is the most powerful. Honestly, that is the wrong question. The real power comes when they start showing up together. Oats in the morning, beans or lentils during the week, walnuts instead of processed snacks, extra virgin olive oil on your vegetables, leafy greens built into meals so they stop feeling optional. That is how arteries get a better environment to live in. Not through fear, not through perfection, through repetition, through friction-free habits that slowly move cholesterol, blood pressure, inflammation, and vascular function in the right direction. And to be honest, that is how most real prevention works in medicine. Thank you for spending this time with me. I genuinely hope this helped you see that food is not a side issue when it comes to artery health. It is one of the main levers you can pull every single day. If this was useful, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to go deeper, I have done more videos on cholesterol, blood pressure, and everyday habits that protect your heart. So have a look around the channel and keep learning. Take care.